Every morning in your garden, there is a sound most people have stopped hearing. The blue tit moving through the apple tree, the magpie on the roof, the robin somewhere in the hedge, close but not visible. Familiar. Background. Part of the quiet before the day begins. But here is what those sounds actually are. They are not bird song. They are not background noise. They are a conversation happening in real time between every bird in your garden about the state of your garden, about what has changed, about what has arrived. And part of what is being said right now is about whether you can be trusted. Welcome to Garden Bird Secrets. If you're new here, subscribe because what you're about to learn will change every morning you spend in your garden. In this video, we're going to cover 4 things. How your garden functions as a living information network, how birds encode different types of danger into different sounds, how the magpie acts as the voice of your entire garden, and finally, the part I want you to stay for, what that network is currently saying about you. There is an old feeling in Britain, not a rule, not a saying exactly, but a feeling, that when the birds go quiet in a garden, something is wrong. Country people have known this for generations. Gamekeepers knew it. Farmers knew it. It wasn't superstition. It was observation, passed down quietly, without a name, for centuries. This is something British people have felt for centuries. Now we have language for why. The first thing to understand is this. The birds in your garden are not operating independently. They are connected. Not by proximity alone, but by shared information. Researchers at the University of Exeter and the University of Bristol studied what happens when birds of different species share the same territory. What they found dismantled a long-held assumption. It had been assumed that alarm calls were primarily species-specific, that a blue tit's alarm was, essentially, for other blue tits. That a robin's warning was a robin's warning. That is not what the data showed. The birds in a shared garden understand each other's alarm calls across species lines. A blue tit's high alarm note triggers a robin's flight response, even when the robin has seen nothing. A great tit's contact call suppresses the blue tit's own movement. The information travels. In your garden, this means no bird is making a decision alone. Every sound is data. Every silence is data. The garden is not a collection of birds. It is a network, and it has been running continuously every morning, whether you stepped outside or not. The next time you hear the garden go quiet, that is not silence. That is information moving faster than sound. The second thing to understand is more precise, and, I think, more unsettling. The birds in your garden do not simply call danger, they call what kind of danger. Research from the University of Washington and Cambridge's zoology department documented alarm call differentiation in corvids, the family that includes our magpies. They found that the magpie produces measurably different vocalizations depending on the nature of the threat. A cat on the fence generates one pattern. A sparrowhawk overhead generates another. A human approaching the garden, another still. Other species in the garden learn to read these differences. Let me put that concretely. One morning, you step outside. The magpie is on the far fence. It calls once, a specific short sequence. The blue tit at the feeder stops feeding and moves into the hedge. The robin, 20 feet away, does not move at all. It continues to sing. 2 species. 1 alarm call. 2 different responses. The blue tit read it as a warning. The robin assessed it as a lesser threat, or perhaps as no threat to itself at all. They were not reacting to the same event. They were interpreting the same sentence, and they understood it differently. In your garden, this means the alarm the magpie sends when you step outside is a specific sound, not a general one. If you've ever stood in your garden and felt genuinely watched, you were not imagining it. This brings us to the part most garden owners never find out. The magpie is not simply one voice in this network. Research from the British Trust for Ornithology into sentinel species and nuclear flock behavior identified something that changes how you have to think about every bird in your garden. Smaller species, blue tits, robins, chaffinches, sparrows, do not only process their own observations. They actively monitor what the magpie and the jay are doing, and they weight that information above their own direct perception. Read that again. A blue tit that has seen nothing alarming will flee, immediately, if the magpie calls with urgency. Even if the blue tit has no line of sight to the threat. Even if the blue tit's own senses have detected nothing. The magpie is not just a bird in your garden, it is the broadcaster, the source that the rest of the garden trusts more than its own eyes. And here is what that means for you specifically. When the magpie assesses you, safe or not safe, that assessment does not stay with one bird. It propagates. Every time you step into your garden and the magpie does not call, the blue tit continues to feed. The robin holds its ground. That is not indifference. That is the network repeating a message that has already been sent. But here is what most garden owners never find out. Stay with me, because this next part changes everything. If you have been patient in your garden, if you have moved slowly, refilled the feeder quietly, stood still long enough to let things settle around you, then that garden has been building something, not a memory in one bird, a consensus. Research from the University of Exeter tracked what happens to the alarm responses of garden birds over time as they become familiar with a specific person. The findings were not subtle. Flight initiation distance, the distance at which a bird decides to leave, decreases significantly the more a bird associates a particular human with safety. And, crucially, BTO garden bird survey data shows that gardens with a trusted, consistent human presence attract and retain more species for longer periods with lower alarm frequency overall. The garden itself becomes different when you are trusted by it. Now, there is something I want to be careful about saying here. Not because the science is uncertain, but because I know it lands differently for different people. You cannot hear what the network is saying about you. That is not how it works. But you may have felt it in other ways. In the robin that does not fly when you kneel down near it. In the blue tit that lands on the feeder whilst you are still standing 2 feet away. In the magpie that watches you and does not call. Those are not coincidences. Those are responses to a reputation. A reputation you built without knowing you were building it. One morning at a time. One quiet step at a time. I'm not going to tell you what that means to you personally. That is not mine to say. But the science is clear on this much. The garden has been listening. And whatever it has concluded about you, it has been telling every bird that arrives. Many of you will have a story about a specific morning, a specific bird, a moment in your garden that you've never quite been able to explain, and perhaps never quite been able to let go of either. Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. These are the stories I carry with me longest. I'll see you in the garden.